that you need. It's the old finance trick. If you're near a bankrupt position, you should switch your stock portfolio to very risky investments because, hey, if they all go bunk, who cares? You're almost bankrupt anyways. But if they all go boom, well, that could put you from a deficit position into the black. So, if you're playing and the top 3 pay out and the bottom 9 don't, you got to play like that. Just go for broke and just get really risky players on your roster and hope they strike it.
You also mentioned about the standings and position. It also matters what team you're trading with and their standings in the position in this their position in the position in the standings also. Because let's say you're in third place and you're trading with the team that's second to last place. What are their needs? Their needs are extreme. They need a lot. And to make a trade seem fair to the rest of the league, you may actually have to give up a little bit more to get what you want, only because you're trading with a team that's lower down in the standings. Otherwise, that trade is going to look very fishy.
Well, that's
to
a
other,
whole different story
as
to fairness and stuff.
Then you have the idea of not having, let's say, the bottom 3 or bottom 4 teams in the standings be able to trade after a certain point.
Yeah, I mean that's a different discussion in terms of fairness of trades and stuff. Let's talk about that now. Fred, you recently made a trade in NL Tout Wars, I believe. I think you're in first place, and you traded Ozzy Albies for Walker Buehler to a team that was pretty low down in the standings. Now, Tout Wars has a special rule that if you finish with fewer than a certain number of points in the league, then the next year you're penalized with FAB. So there's some incentive for a bottom team. Question is it enough to trade to lower value? Of course, what about teams leagues that do not have that rule? Should high up teams be trading with teams that are in very, very low with a very low probability of winning the whole thing? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I've always felt like that there are really no rules for that. You can trade for anyone. You're sure you can trade with anyone at any point in the season if they want to make the trade. I hope all the different managers have integrity, and even if your team's lower in the standings, I hope you're trading with the purpose of saving some pride and moving up in the standings and improving yourself. But if the team in second is a perfect match in a certain way, there's only in some leagues 9, in some leagues 11, in some leagues maybe 13 or 14 other managers. So it's not like the major leagues where you've got about 29 other people to deal with. So you find the team that's a good fit with you, and if they happen to be way lower in the standings or way higher in the standings, then so be it. I've had teams, my labor team this year has struggled and is kind of middle of the pack right now, but was like way low. And I was trying to make trades, and I was way low, and I'd had a ton of injuries. Like I couldn't believe how many injuries I had, and I was trying to trade my way out of it. And I hope that everybody, even if I tried to trade my way out of it right up until the deadline in that league, like I hope everybody would give me a fair shake and not say like, oh, you're way down in the standings, I don't want to trade with you. Like I'm trying to trade my way up. I'm trying to save some face. Like I was thinking, I don't want to finish in a 15-team league. I don't want to finish 12th. Like I don't like that. I want to try to move up, even if it's to 6th or something like that. And I know there's no money there's no money in labor for any of it, but I know there's no pride in finishing 6th. But to me, it would mean something to not finish 12th. So I'll trade with anyone. The trade I recently made was initiated in the NL Tout, was initiated by Peter Kreutzer, who was the person I traded with. He offered me a pitcher for hitter trade, and then we kind of tweaked it and made a deal. But yeah, he initiated it. He's trying to move up in the standings. I totally respect that, because if I was in Peter's position, I'd be trying to do the exact same thing. And for what Peter wanted to do, my roster, when you looked at the standings, was the absolute perfect fit for that deal.
Yeah, I have a different philosophy though. First of all, I think that leagues should make penalties for finishing last. I think that if leagues are going to pay out, I think there should be a pay scale all the way up and down. I think there should be a difference between 10th place and 9th place and 8th place, even if it's small, because there has to be an aim. Because if there is no money given out, I actually don't think there should be trades. And let me give you my reasoning for that. Talk about stuff as I do as an actuary. So I work with something. I hope people are interested in this, but I work in something that's called reinsurance. Reinsurance is insurance for insurance companies. Now, if you have a company in America and you also own a company in Bermuda, back in the old days when the taxation rate was 35% in the U.S. but only 20% in Bermuda, you certainly want, if you're going to make profit, you want to make the profit in Bermuda and not in the U.S. Okay, so if you're going to, you can make a sort of a contract of insurance and just have all the profits funnel from America to Bermuda. That is somewhat distasteful. It's actually illegal to do that. You can't, because it's business that's written in the U.S. You don't want it to go to Bermuda. Certainly the tax guys don't want that, and it's against the law. So anytime we have a contract, there has to be fairness, and there are very specific tests that have to be performed, and that's one of my jobs at my company, is to test that there's a reasonable chance that either side can lose. If there's high insurance losses, if there's low insurance losses, the Bermuda can lose, the U.S. entity can lose. There has to be some kind of way. In fantasy baseball, I think it's the same thing, but it's not reasonable. It's gain. Anytime there's a trade, there has to be a reasonable chance of a meaningful gain on both sides. Certainly, if you're in second place, your meaningful gain could push you into first. But if you're in last place and it's already almost the end of the year and you're 50 points out of the money, there is very, very little probability of you jumping up to the money. And so to me, there is no chance of a gain because you're not going to get in the money. So I think that is unbelievably unfair. And the team in last place, you should have traded earlier in the year. Well, what are you waiting till the last minute to balance your roster? It's unfair. And I take a very strong approach on that point because I'm just looking for fairness. You're basically taking a player not in the money-making pool and throwing him to there. I mean, the second place team is getting a player and really giving nothing to a pool that's going to have money. It doesn't make sense to me. That's why I think that leagues need to have some kind of pay scale up and down so that there's a reason, a gain for something up and down the entire standing pool.
Or turn the league into a keeper league, and then it gives everyone a reason to have these profitable trades so that they'll have it for next year and the year after.
Yeah,
that's possible. No, although not everybody likes keeper leagues. I'm not a big keeper league guy. I don't know. It just hasn't really caught my fancy. So I understand what you're saying I understand what you're saying. That being said, I will say, first of all the players are still in the competition for impacting who wins the league, because even the team that's in last place isn't necessarily in last place in all the categories, and the team that's in last place could certainly, you know what I mean? Like the team in last place could be fourth in steals, and they could pass two guys in steals, and those two guys could be two guys who are competing for first, and they can impact the standings. So even the players on the last place teams, they're still impacting the overall standings because they're still in the league, even though that team can't compete to win. I understand from a like a business financial sense what you're saying. That being said, I've always said, once my name is on that team, I care about where they finish. There is a pride aspect to playing in these fantasy leagues. I have never finished last or second last or third last on any of these expert leagues, and I don't plan on doing that ever. So if I'm in Tout Wars and I'm in 11th place out of 12, and until we hit the trade deadline, I'm going to keep battling because it says Fred Zinkie beside that team, and I do not want ever for there to be a team down that low. And if there ever is going to be a team down that low with my name on it, I want to know that I did everything I could to make sure that didn't happen, because it means something to me. And there is a pride aspect to these leagues. Like I said, in the Labor League, it will mean something to me if I could finish fifth with all the injuries I had on that team at the beginning of the year. If I can pull it up to fifth or sixth and not be 12th out of 15, to me that means a lot. I'm not gonna it doesn't mean as a lot as finishing first will to the guy who finishes first, but it means something to me. I would say that if you don't want people trading past a certain date in your league, then move your trade deadline up. So I think the Tout Wars won, and I love Tout Wars, but the trade deadline's at the end of August, and I think that's probably too late. I think the trade deadline should probably be at the end of July, especially if you're worried about if you want to avoid those trades, just move your trade deadline up, because leagues are still super competitive after the trade deadline.
Sure,
But
sure.
I would say you could move the trade deadline up. But there's so many factors from those bottom feeder teams. Like, we're talking trades tonight, but there's whether they even submit their lineups. There's whether they still compete on the waiver wire. Like, how many times have we seen teams that finish we have $1,000 fab and they finish the season with $750 fab because they quit.
Right.
They quit halfway through, and you're like, man, if that guy had kept competing, he could have wrestled some players away from the guy who beat me out to win the league. Like, he had the fab to do it, and he just didn't even bother using it anymore. And the pickups were obvious, and he just isn't even doing it anymore. So I think just everyone competing to the end is really what we're striving for.
Yeah. Listen, there's a lot of gray areas here, and good to hear both sides of the coin. Again, the way to do it is to just change the rules a little bit. We had a rule in one of Ruben and I's home league that there was a trade deadline, but then there was an earlier trade deadline, so that the top third of the league would not be allowed to trade with the bottom third of the league. The top third can trade with the middle third can trade with the bottom third, and the middle can trade with anybody. But you can't have the top teams trading with the bottom teams past, let's say, the All-Star break, and the rest of the league, it was first week in August. Just to block out some of these type of seemingly collusive trades, or to keep people more engaged earlier. And, hey, you want to trade, you got to trade earlier and get this done.
I mean, but for sure. And I mean, sometimes a team in 10th place, they might have traded earlier. They might have traded earlier, middler, and later. Like, they might have been doing all sorts of things, and just nothing's working. But I can respect someone who's trying things, and sometimes not trading is still trying. But sometimes people who are low in the standings, it's not like they didn't bother trading until July. They did trade maybe in April and May and June. It hasn't worked.
You and I both had articles about earlier Fernando Tatis and the possibility of trading him after that injury. But before we talk about that, it's time for the Injury Guru's Trivia of the Week.
So as we're going to jump into our discussion about Fernando Tatis Jr., he is currently the number one overall ranked fantasy player in most standard scoring leagues. And he was drafted in most leagues as either the first, second, usually sometimes third, but usually the first or second in most drafts this year. So the trivia for this week is, in the last 10 years, 2 players have either been drafted first or second and ended up the fantasy year being value-wise first or second. Who are they?
It's amazing how that's not a lot, right? Only 2.
2 in the last 10 years have been drafted first or second and finished the year first or second.
Correct.
In the last 10 years.
10 years.
Okay.
It's a good one this week, Ruben.
It's interesting. I mean, one of them, just you have to go back and think who were the top picks in the last couple of years. First 2 picks.
Yeah, totally. I'm thinking back, I feel like Trout never actually is. I feel like I would say Trout's one of them, but I feel like he never is really first or second.
Trout was one of them in 2014 and in 2016.
I just felt like in those 10 years, if we were occupying that's 20 guys who have gone first or second. I felt like he was probably like 6 of them out of the 20, maybe 7 out of the 20. So I felt like
good to guess him just for quantity, right?
Yeah, the best odds. Now the other one. So now I'm trying to think of other people who have been going first or second.
I'll give you a hint. He's still in the league.
Okay.
He's older. Miguel Cabrera?
Miguel Cabrera is correct.
Wow.
2012, 2013, he was almost a consensus number 1.
You said still in the league. That means he's old.
Well, I'm sorry. In 2013, he was drafted number 1 usually, and he was, I think, the second overall. And in 2012, he was drafted either first or second, but he ranked third. So
Maybe
he almost
Pujols.
got back the same value.
Maybe Pujols if you go back long enough, right?
Yeah. What year did you say was the Trout? What was the Trout year?
2014 and 2016.
Oh wow! So nobody's done it in the last since 2016.
Nobody's
right,
no.
yeah.
The problem is everyone of those top picks have gotten injured, which brings us to Fernando Tatis. He was injured earlier this year, and I know I was advocating and Ari was advocating just a little bit also to maybe trade him because you don't know what you're going to get from the rest of the season. So then the question here is this: were we wrong to say that at this point? I mean, this is a question of trading. Would you trade your top pick from the entire draft during the course of the season just because you think he's not going to get that value?
Yeah, it's such a tough call. So I have him on my Tout NL team, and he's obviously the biggest part of the puzzle right now. So I was writing articles encouraging people to trade him, but I didn't actually trade him. That just doesn't